All right, welcome to the Two Sons Podcast, Episode 5. Dave Filoni in his bag.
Dude,
in
I know.
his bag with Ahsoka.
In Dave Filoni, we trust. That's
Yes.
what we said last time, right?
You know,
Here we are.
It was so funny because I was going into that episode super excited, obviously.
Yeah.
About 2/3 of the way through, I was ready to get on this show and have you and I just brag nonstop about how we absolutely nailed what was going to happen. Both of us nailed the whole, like, Ahsoka's basically going to be on the fringe of death and this is going to be her, like you shouldn't die thing. We both nailed the flashbacks with Anakin. Specifically, I talked about how they would... I'm trying to remember exactly what I said, but as they would come out of that, they would go after Ezra and Sabine, and I'm like, this is all going to go well. And then it takes a huge right turn or left turn at the end of the episode with them all loading up on space whales,
Dude, I know.
and on Purgles and going to this other galaxy, which now totally throws a wrench in everything. And now I have no idea what the hell is going to happen.
I will call myself out a little bit too. I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a whole lot of Ahsoka next episode.
Yeah, that's well, no, but then if you remember, so that was the other thing I was going to brag about.
And
is
then,
like
this
I
entire
stepped in,
episode
if you
was
remember, and
Ahsoka.
I was like, no, I think it's going to be all Ahsoka, and I thought we might not see anything with the Eye of Zion because they're going to consider that like the travel time,
Yeah.
and that ended up being right. But like neither of us expected them to venture to this other galaxy. We thought Thrawn was going to basically come back.
And the entire episode, I thought Hera and Jason were going to go with Ahsoka. Like, not the entire episode. When we kind of started to realize, hey, Ahsoka's gone, I thought Hera was going to join her in the Ghost, but of course that didn't happen.
Yeah, it looked like they were going to anyway because she traveled with her to the Purgles.
Right.
So I had the same thing in mind. But like, so I want to start with...
There's a lot to talk about.
Yes, we have everything involving the flashbacks with Hayden Christensen.
Just the
There's
dopest.
unbelievable.
This is gonna sound so ridiculous, but I got chills when,
It was great.
when I saw the like live action Clone Wars. Are you kidding me?
It was really
so
cool.
sick.
Classic, like tons and tons of like smoke in the air and the laser fire
Yes.
just kind of illuminating everything. Every time there was an explosion, you'd see one of the tanks in the background.
Dude.
It was
They were
it
super
was awesome.
intentional about having both phases of the clone troopers too. So they had phase 1 to start and then phase 2.
Well, they
during the
came up
Siege
with
of
an
Mandalore.
excuse to essentially like show us live action versions of both Clone Wars characters,
Yes.
which is early Clone Wars Anakin, late Clone Wars Anakin, early Clone Wars Ahsoka, late Clone Wars Ahsoka. Like
Right.
we got to see the single green lightsaber, which I think was in like season 1 and 2 only of Clone Wars, right?
Right.
Anakin with the shorter hair, Anakin with the actual like clone trooper armor,
So
or
sick.
the Jedi warrior armor.
I know, they're like, what's really important for a Jedi warrior to wear? Shoulder armor. That's the most important thing. They're gonna have some kick-ass shoulder armor.
Well, it was a classic like thing that they did for cartoonish effect, but they actually translated it pretty well to live action.
For sure, it was incredible.
I thought the action scene with Ahsoka cutting down all of the Mandalorians was freaking incredible. When she stabs the female Mandalorian in the chest and she pulls it out, and
Dude.
it was that whole scene was epic.
And it was dope because it was super historical. Like, as you know, that was the Siege of Mandalore.
Did you think we were going to see Maul for a second?
I did not think we were going to see Maul, but I loved the fact that we saw that, like, the Death Watch under Maul's rule.
Yeah, with
and
the
they all
little
looked
horns
like,
on the thing. Yeah,
dude,
yeah.
It was so freaking cool. And then we saw Captain Rex, which was incredible to see live action Captain Rex. Are you kidding me? It's so sick.
It was all top tier Star Wars fodder for people like us.
Yeah, and not only that, we also saw Ahsoka's clones, essentially. So, like, that portion of the 501st
That had
where
the
they all
painted
had
faces.
like the painted faces to resemble Ahsoka.
So let's what's funny is I didn't even notice the painted faces.
Really?
That's a classic case of like Luke's observational ability being so much better than mine. So let's this is my next question I want to ask you. What did you think of the overall narrative pathway of the Ahsoka Hayden Christensen scene? Because to be clear, like all of the action was epic. Like the lightsaber battle between Ahsoka and Hayden Christensen was absolutely epic.
2 episodes in a row, by the way, where there's been incredible lightsaber duels.
Absolutely, like because Dave Filoni understands the assignment.
True,
but like I thought Anakin did a really good job of replicating this. The same fluidity and like athletic kind of like
agree.
Jedi vibe that like you pick up from, because the greatest lightsaber battle in any Star Wars film, in my opinion.
Oh,
is
this is going to be a
versus
take.
Obi-Wan versus Anakin in Revenge of the Sith at Mustafar. Like,
Okay,
the
that's
overall,
totally fair.
the overall, like, and probably the other one that you'd probably throw in there is going to be Maul versus Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan,
Dude,
right?
but Maul versus Obi-Wan, number 2, when Maul dies. That's like
Yeah,
one of the
but
shortest
I'm talking
lightsaber
live
battles.
action.
I know.
I'm talking
okay,
live
okay,
action.
I hear you.
Okay.
I mean, that is dude. We should do a show on
The
lightsaber
the
battles.
ranking
I'm dead
lightsaber battles.
serious. Like, I'm dead serious. Let's do that.
So, but I would argue that the Anakin Obi-Wan lightsaber battle in Revenge of the Sith is the very best overall acrobatic, like
sure.
like lightsaber
It's
battle
a
that
nice
happened.
long battle as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is just the athletic capability of those two.
Right.
And like, obviously, if you have a CGI Yoda fighting a super old guy in Palpatine, it's not going to look as cool. You know,
True.
like there's
I feel you.
or Mace Windu versus Palpatine. Like there's going to be shortcomings, but
Right.
honestly, Hayden Christensen captured that same vibe. And like
Totally.
one of the things he does that I think is super cool is like those really slow, drawn out, like half of the first move, and then he like explodes and like hits like
dude,
3 or 4 moves.
That is
I love that whole vibe.
so remnant of Clone Wars. You're talking about the plot line between Anakin and Ahsoka, though. Like how what I thought about it.
So obviously we can embrace that the lightsaber battle between Anakin and Ahsoka was incredible. The 2 Clone Wars flashbacks were incredible.
Yeah.
The ending was incredible. All of that was great. But there was a narrative pathway there. And the narrative pathway is basically Ahsoka falls, has a near-death experience. She transfers into some portal in the Force that even Jason Solo, as a Force-sensitive young kid, can sense and actually hear the lightsabers clashing, right? And she's in this environment.
A world between worlds.
The narrative is that Anakin has to complete Ahsoka's training, and like there's not really a whole lot of substance there. And so like I'm curious what I'll go after you. I'm just curious, like, did you think anything negative about the overall dialogue of that scene?
You know, no. And it seems like you did. And I'm curious to see what you have to say about it. But the answer to that is no, because if I'm not mistaken, which I very well may be, I think the final lesson for Ahsoka to learn was to not always follow Anakin's lead, essentially.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And I honestly think, like, as
That's
him being a
interesting.
master, I think he was teaching her to not always follow his lead, essentially, because as we all know, his lead took him to some pretty dark places, and it was very open that he was Darth Vader, right? So like they have those really cool scenes where he's charging into battle and he's got his lightsaber extended out to his right side, and then for a split second it turns red and he's wearing like the cape and the mask.
That's
right?
interesting.
Like,
Okay, so you think that the Filoni put in the flashbacks to Vader as essentially an indicator that Anakin was wrong in this particular approach?
Yes, exactly. And for Ahsoka to take her own path and to be okay with that and to lean into that. And then one thing that you kind of notice, I mean, there is so much symbolism in this show. It was crazy how much symbolism there was. But you notice happy Ahsoka in this episode. Like one of the big issues that people had where they said that Ahsoka didn't feel like Ahsoka. But in this episode in particular, she smiles a lot.
Yeah, when she wakes up, she's like it's like she's transformed in her approach mentally.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like sitting on her ship in the mouth of a giant purgle, and she's like, yeah, I don't know where we're gonna go, but I pretty much feel good about it. You know what I mean? And that, I think that was like some chains being broken for her with that final lesson that Anakin had to show her.
Well, and she would have probably interpreted that entire experience as some sort of sign from the Force that she needs to proceed, which would imply that the Purgle is going to take her to the right place and that there's going to be a purpose
Could you
for
imagine?
her. Yeah.
It just doesn't.
it just shows up at Kashyyyk and then like just drops her off in like an orbit. Like, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Purgle.
We're headed back.
The
A
Purgle
lot of course
waits.
to Cetas. Yeah. So,
Tell me your thoughts on that. I'm curious.
So, okay, your interpretation of it actually makes a lot more sense to me in like kind of a complicated way, but it certainly wasn't very clear cut. I watched it twice. I watched it a second time this morning because I wanted to kind of like re-get a feel for the dialogue. Because when it happened last night, I wasn't a huge fan. And I remember looking over at Carly and being like that was cool and all, but like, it felt like just like a loose plot element that gave us an excuse to throw a bunch of like kind of like low-hanging Star Wars fruit, which I'm always down for low-hanging Star Wars fruit, but at the same time, like it's nice when there's a narrative base to it. And so if you listen back to it, basically when they're on the bridge at the beginning, the gist of what Anakin says is like, I need to finish your training. And she's like, well, what kind of training? And he basically goes like, are you going to live or are you going to die? Basically like, are you going to fight or are you going to not fight? And then, and then there's that little like quip where she goes like, I won't fight you. And he goes like, I've heard that before, which was a reference to, come on, you could do this.
You're putting me on the spot.
Luke Skywalker. The multiple times that he would say, I will not fight you.
Oh, okay.
So basically, like essentially, Luke at multiple points in Return of the Jedi, once at the beginning of the fight and then once again at the end of the fight before he gets electrocuted. He basically tells Vader he's not going to fight him. So that was basically his loose reference to that. That's the way I interpreted that, at least. But after that particular scene, like, he cuts the bridge. So the only real dialogue advantage that we get, or understanding that we get there, is that Anakin's trying to teach her to fight. Okay. Then we go to the Clone Wars, and after they have Ahsoka's kind of like disoriented about where they are, but after that first combat scene, they end up kind of like dealing with wounded soldiers, and then she has another conversation with Anakin, and in this other conversation with Anakin, she basically goes like, this was our fault. And he basically pulls her aside and goes like, no, it wasn't. Like, there's loss as a part of war. This is blah, 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 you know? And then Ahsoka basically goes like, I feel like this wasn't what I was trained for. Essentially making a critique about the idea between what a Jedi is supposed to be and what a Jedi had become, which is a very
peacekeeper versus a warrior.
Yeah, and we specifically hear Mace Windu I believe in Attack of the Clones, specifically say to the Chancellor, I believe, something along the lines of like, we are keepers of the peace, not soldiers. Anakin says the exact opposite of that. Like, he's like, there's a job to be done and we're the best for it. Yeah, and he literally said like, we used to be keepers of the peace, but now I need to train you to be a soldier. And then Ahsoka has some sort of comment like, wait, is that all we are? You know?
And then is that what I'm teaching?
Is that what I'm going to teach my kid? And then he makes some weird comment about training Padawans. Like, are you sure you want to train? And like, being a teacher is overrated or something like that. Yeah. It's really weird dialogue. And then they run off into battle again. Then they fast forward to the Siege of Mandalore. Anakin kind of makes a little bit of small talk with her, but then he basically turns to the dark side because she doesn't understand that she needs to fight, and then they fight each other. Yeah. Then he pushes her through the smog, lands back on the bridge. They keep fighting. Then she disarms him, and then he basically goes like, she says, I'm going to fight. Essentially, I'm going to keep fighting. I want to live. I think she says, I want to live. And then Anakin goes, okay, I think now you have a chance.
And he's good guy Anakin again. Like, his eyes go back to normal.
Yeah, which was cool. I thought that was cool.
Oh, it was great. It was the dopest thing.
But like, the gist of everything I just said, like, it's like 50% random small talk, okay? And then the other 50% of it is just random, like I'd say the other 25% of the remainder is like comments about like what the Jedi had become, and then the other 25% of it is like, you got to fight. Like, you know you got to fight, right? Like, there wasn't a ton of narrative weight there.
No, I feel you, and you know, you and I took it in two different ways, right? So with mine, I think, like, in summary, is there's a lot to be learned from Anakin Skywalker, literally one of the greatest, right? But at the end of the day, like, Ahsoka needs to follow her own path and realize that Anakin's not always correct. Now, with that being said, I think there could be multiple lessons in this, right? Like, you can't just give up and allow the Empire to do what they want. And so there is this like undertone of like, hey, I've taught you well, but I'm not perfect, from Anakin, but also the undertone of, there's still a battle to be won though. And Ahsoka still fights. So overall, like, that scene was super, super powerful for me. I feel like that's a scene that's really going to age well. There's certain Star Wars scenes that just don't, you know? And I feel like, you know, in a year or two, we're going to go back after we have the full story. And I feel like that's the type of scene where it's going to be like, oh my gosh, like, there's so much in that scene that we couldn't even picture because we didn't know the full story, and now we do. And that's going to be like a really cool scene to look back on, I bet.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to make a future reference to it in the show, or if maybe it's something that, like, after the series is over, like Dave Filoni in like the How We Made It movie, they always release one of those after every season.
Yeah, there's already one on. There's like some extra bonus Ahsoka footage apparently on Disney Plus.
I'll have to check that out after. I'm going to wait till after we get done because I don't want to have any spoilers. But I would be curious to see Dave Filoni specifically talk about it, but your whole interpretation of it makes a lot more sense to me. Basically, like Ahsoka, because like Anakin does make mention of like my legacy lives in you, but not just me, but my master before me and his master before him. Basically, like the legacy of each master is passed on to the apprentice, and then she kind of continues that train. And I interpret that essentially kind of in your vein of like Anakin's legacy is more of that of a soldier. And of like kind of like untamed power.
Yes, intense power.
Yes, but there is like some good there, but there's some bad there as well. And if I interpret it as Ahsoka kind of like seeing what the bad was in Anakin and kind of identifying that, then I could get on board with what you're saying.
And let's talk legacies too. Did you notice that Ahsoka calls herself a Jedi again?
She did?
She does.
Okay.
So when they're trying to essentially get Jason to do something, because Ahsoka and Hera needed to talk, right? And Ahsoka says something along the lines of like, "Have you ever seen a Jedi's ship?" And Hu Yang takes Jason, and
but that's actually a Jedi starship, though. That's literally what that was.
True, but she says a Jedi's like apostrophe S ship. It's there, dude. Check it out. So the other thing too, I
remain unconvinced.
Well, let me convince you. No, but guess who could potentially be Ahsoka's Padawan and continue that legacy?
Jason.
That'd
be really cool.
Way better than Sabine. No offense, everybody, but Sabine's not really that strong in the Force. So.
She's actually the weakest of all the Jedi.
Who knows where Jason goes?
Yeah. No, the Jason storyline is going to be really interesting in the long run. I don't know how they do anything with it in
big picture wise.
Yeah,
like where's Jason?
Yeah, But like, okay, so I will confess to being more comfortable with the Anakin Ahsoka scene now that you've kind of given me a different perspective on it. I wasn't like I don't want to say I like didn't like it, because that's not true. I did like that scene, but like I wanted more clarification as to what exactly they were trying to accomplish from a narrative standpoint. Because if it's just simply like Star Wars fodder based on the really overused trope of like the person kind of dies but then has a sort of vision where they regain the motivation to, like, I remember watching with Carly and I when we were younger, we watched the Grey's Anatomy movies, and there's I think we made it through like 6 or 7 seasons, and at one point like Meredith starts drowning. And she's drowning, and she starts having this like crazy hallucination in the hospital where she's like trying to save this guy that she can't save, and she's communicating with some of the patients that she had that died in the past, and then suddenly she finds the will to fight. Yeah. And then suddenly starts comes to life in the hospital as they're trying to resuscitate her, and like that is a type of kind of motif that's been done a lot.
Oh, for sure.
And so if it was just that with Star Wars fodder, not a huge fan. If it's part of like some larger thing that they tie back to later, I think it makes a lot more sense.
And I think it is. And there's probably a lot to talk about, but I just don't know which way it's going. But like the whole entire like Mortis and the fact that Ahsoka's been saved twice in the world between worlds, and the whole entire like father, daughter, and son, and how Ahsoka's essentially an extension of the daughter now. Like that is super complicated Star Wars, and I'm not even gonna venture into that right now, just because it's so unclear as far as like where this is going and how big of a role or not big of a role it plays into this season of Ahsoka.
Yeah, it's hard to even see the bigger picture, because like we don't know if this is meant to be a standalone story where like they defeat Thrawn and Ahsoka dies at the end, or if it's like part of some big picture thing that ends in a movie. Like we don't know. We have our suspicions, but we don't know.
Do you think we see Thrawn in next episode?
I think it's almost certain. And like it's funny because I was as excited for this episode as I've ever been for any Star Wars content, and I'm even more excited for next week now. Yeah. Like now, especially with this wrinkle, and so that's where I want to go next. So basically, the New Republic shows up, and the general, like, you can tell they all like Hera, because like the what's his name? What's our Carson? Carson is like totally willing to do whatever it takes for Hera.
Poor guy.
And then even the I'm presumably an admiral or some sort of
she
higher
identified
level
herself.
captain, like maybe a senior captain or something, who's in the Republic military, shows up, and like even she's just like hey, like
Could you just tell us?
Could you just tell me? Like, I don't need to go arrest her right now, but I need you to tell me. Like, they didn't try to stop the whales. Like, they just needed to be told. And so it was kind of cool to see that. But basically, like, the show takes a turn because basically when the map gets destroyed and everyone runs off, your brain immediately goes to they're going to show back up with Ron, with Ezra, and it's going to be a whole thing.
They're going to go do their thing. They're going to come back to the galaxy we know.
Exactly, especially when what I predicted would happen happened, which was we don't see anything from those people in this episode. So I thought that would be basically their travel time, and then we'd follow Ahsoka and her journey with Anakin, and then the Eye of Sion would return, and then we'd have our galactic conflict. And now that's not what's going to happen.
No,
and now
we're going to some new galaxy.
Yeah, we have 3 episodes left. Like, this is most likely going to end in this other galaxy, which is like super intriguing. I have no idea what to expect.
No.
We have no idea what the general like powers and factions are in this other galaxy. We don't know if the Force exists in this other galaxy.
Yeah.
We don't know if Thrawn is just trying to escape that galaxy or if he's encountered some sort of other threat in that galaxy that he's looking towards. Like, we have literally no idea what's going to happen in this other galaxy.
It's sick.
And we're going to get our first hint of it next Wednesday or Tuesday night, and I'm super excited.
And what's really sick is, there's been some level of there's been like a stagnant feel with Star Wars in some cases because we've been stuck in this galaxy, and we're literally just opening that up.
Yeah.
Just overnight, it's opened, which is...
We've complained about this nonstop.
Really,
like, repeat the same, rinse, repeat. It's like some sort of Imperial warlord tries to take control of Imperial resources. The New Republic military is not that strong because they don't believe in military that much, and then they fight each other, and then some hero saves the day. Like, it's the same. It's been overdone. And then even to the extent that the First Order was basically just a repackaged, rebranded empire. So I'm so down for something different. I'm just so down for something different. And I can't wait to see what we end up seeing when we get out to this other galaxy. Do you have any guess?
Dude, I have zero clue.
I have no idea.
Like, are we going to see good guy or bad guy Thrawn? Like, that's my biggest wonder, and I think that's what I'm most interested for, is to see how Thrawn is portrayed live action. Like, there is a possibility that this could just go terrible for people who actually understand Thrawn's character through reading the books. Dave Filoni, though, does a really, really good job, though. And I think, like we talked about in previous episodes, like, there is a little bit of a battle-hardened Thrawn that we're going to see, where maybe he's not as benevolent as he once was, especially when he was rising through the ranks of the Chiss Ascendancy, even prior to when he was a part of the Empire. There was a distracting portion of this episode, and I think it was just like a timeline confusion, but Jason's on the Ghost and they're flying around over the water, and he's like, hey, go over here, and he gives Hera coordinates, and then the scene changes and it becomes like nightfall almost by the time that they actually save Ahsoka. And then all of a sudden Jason's like on land and the Ghost is flying towards him with Ahsoka in the ship. And it's just,
I don't think Jason was in the ship, though, was he? Are you sure? Are you sure it wasn't Hu Yang in the ship? And because Hera
I interpreted that wrong.
Hera left Jason on the cliffside
right, and
to
he was
continue
through Chopper.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. I in my brain, so I'm glad that we talked about this. In my brain, because I was like, that was really messy of Dave. Like, that's not really like him. So it's my stupidity, of course. But yeah, I envisioned Jason like being somewhere in the Ghost, like talking to Hera through an intercom. But it was actually like a radio.
Yeah, it was through Chopper, and I think Hu Yang was on the ship. I'm
actually shocked, by the way, that Chopper hasn't been more involved in any like fight scenes thus far. Like, Chopper's such like a crafty, angsty little robot that I'm surprised he hasn't been in more stuff. Side note,
if Thrawn ends up being the antagonist naval commander that we've grown to expect, and by the way, we got a little bit more naval jargon with the senior captain or admiral or whatever of
whomever she was
talking to the tractor beam operator, and
That's
so
cool.
we got a little bit of that, but like if we do get more of that from Thrawn, I think we will get to see more of Hera and Chopper in action flying. So I just finished. Well, before we get there, was there any other specific call outs you had?
I don't think so.
We did see Ahsoka use psychometry, the ability that Cal Kestis has.
And she was dabbling with that even in the first episode when she was in like the Dathomirian temple trying to get the map to begin.
She was getting close and feeling and like listening.
Yeah, but the psychometry is a really interesting aspect. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, essentially some Jedi, and it's actually a very select few that have this ability where they can essentially feel an object and they can like sense echoes essentially in the Force, whether it be like feelings or even like verbal hallucinations. No, they're not hallucinations. Interactions, let's call them, from just like things that this object has been through in the past. So Ahsoka being able to do that actually is a huge deal.
And that was Cal Kestis's like primary interaction with the Force in the Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order games. Was he basically could like feel an object and like feel. And there's a really cool scene in Jedi Fallen Order where Cal is fighting against the Inquisitor in this like big climactic battle. It's the second to last time you fight her, if I remember correctly. And in the fight,
fifth sister?
I think it was the fifth sister, but it's Seer Junda's apprentice, right? And who ended up turning to the dark side. Yeah. So at one point during the conflict, Cal disarms her and like grabs her lightsaber. And when he grabs her lightsaber, he automatically gets like overcome with her turning to the dark side, like a vision of her turning to the dark side, and he literally is like crippled by it, and then that's when she escapes. It is a really, really cool scene, but that is definitely something we've seen. And I actually went down a similar kind of mental pathway when I saw Jason Syndulla standing at Jason Solo's from the Legends universe. Which I have something I want to talk to you about that too at the end. But Jason, when he's standing over the ledge, like it kind of reminded me of Avar Kriss in the High Republic novels, where like every single Force user kind of has a unique like interpretation of the Force, whether it's music for Avar Kriss. There was another one where it was like wind.
And like an ocean.
Yeah, an ocean or like a wind. Like everyone kind of has like a different thing. And I thought maybe Jason Solo's was like kind of through sound as well. Like he has like an auditory interpretation. Cool. But then that got killed when Hera comes over, and Hera clearly hears the lightsaber sounds too.
True, but
at least that was the way they were hinting at it.
They were, but Jason being able to even pick up on that is huge. And then who knows? Like Jason could have amplified that unintentionally for Hera. I mean, there's a lot of ways that could have been explained naturally through the Force, I think.
So, I just finished the 6th Thrawn book again this last week, and I just started the Bane trilogy. So I want to.
Oh, okay. So I'm
yeah. So
I'm about a quarter of the way through the Bane audiobook, first one right now.
Bane just fought the McCurth in his first duel on the top of the Temple of Korriban and strangled the life out of him.
Dude, I'm exactly in the same spot. You go through audiobooks so much faster than what I do. It's insane.
Well, I've been doing all this work on the house too, so I just put in my headphones. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. But like, I finished the Thrawn book again, and like, I am now fully convinced that Thrawn is not going to be like, I just want to take charge of the Empire again. Like, I really do think there's going to be real complexity with Thrawn.
Yeah, I hope so.
It cannot be made more clear that the entire purpose behind him leaving the Ascendancy was literally thinking the Empire could be an ally against the Grisk. That is why he left. And if you remember, as you go back in the 3rd Thrawn book, which is based on his time in the Empire, the 3rd Thrawn book ends with Admiral Ar'alani and him having a conversation about how he needs to come back.
Yeah.
And Thrawn's like, no, I have some stuff I got to finish first. But he's basically says, but I will eventually.
True.
So like it's Thrawn's entire life mission and purpose is to serve the Chiss Ascendancy. It is so abundantly clear in the books. I do think that it's very possible that he views the Empire as a vehicle. And we talked about this several times on the show. We don't need to get into it again. But I am more convinced than ever after finishing the book and knowing now that we're going to meet Thrawn in this other galaxy. I am more convinced than ever that Thrawn is going to be a deeply complex character in live action that has split loyalties, that if he is an antagonist is going to largely be because of the vehicle with which he sees his goal being accomplished rather than what the goal is. Yeah, and I think his ultimate goal is safety.
I totally agree.
And in a super important detail to this is at the end of the Ascendancy trilogy, he makes allies where no one else in the Chiss Ascendancy wants to make allies. He has the Garween unity and the Pakash helping him, and he has I want to say the Vat Combine helps him as well. He gets 3 major factions in the chaos to come help him,
right?
And it's a big deal. And the Chiss Ascendancy is complaining about it after, but like literally, like Thrawn was one of the few Chiss who actually cared about living beings outside of the Chiss Ascendancy, and he legitimately views their safety as his ultimate priority. And so
Agreed.
I do think he's going to be a deeply complex character.
No, and just to spitball off of that, I think he'll also view the Republic, the New Republic, as weak. Which is why I think he'll want to squash them. Yeah, which for whatever it's worth, does align with Thrawn's true identity.
I think that there's no chance that this happens.
No chance. You're hearing it.
To be clear, 0% chance this happens. But
next episode,
and the reason why there's a 0% chance this happened is the time they've spent building out the Shadow Council. The simple fact that I can't remember his name, the guy that's like his right hand man who.
Thrawn's right hand man.
Yeah, Thrawn's right hand man, who's the Imperial officer. I can't remember what his name is, but like he was in the Shadow Council, and he was the one that was talking about Thrawn's return. But anyway, there's that dynamic. There's also the Admiral uniform he's wearing in the trailer. There's also the simple fact that they made a clear reference 2 episodes ago to the idea that there is a scattered Imperial fleet that has real power and danger if it's together. So all of that kind of clearly signals to me that is the direction they're going. So I don't think this is going to happen. But I would love to see the entire conflict and everything centered around these characters be something that involves this other galaxy. And the main reason why is it brings
I think there's a chance
top tier level story to middle tier characters. And this is something we've talked about a lot on this show, but the problem with cramming content in the current Skywalker timeline is you end up always being the second most important story. I've even seen some criticism about this on Instagram, where like the memes where it's like what Luke is doing. Well, I don't know if you've seen any of these.
I totally saw that.
Where it's like, what is literally like Grand Admiral Thrawn's thinking about returning. The Imperial Remnant is up to all this shit. Like all this stuff is going down, and literally Luke's just chilling. And that's fair criticism. But that's the problem when you've got A-list characters and A-list stories, and then B-list characters and B-list stories. And so if you draw something into this other galaxy, you provide potentially real stakes to these characters. And I think that is what would get real buy-in from fans.
Okay. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And like there's 100 different ways to write this plot, right? There's even a chance that Ahsoka could potentially get stuck in that new galaxy. And that's where Ahsoka goes, and maybe that's where Jason Syndulla goes, and maybe you have your own plot line with Ahsoka and Jason in that galaxy. Like literally it's infinite as far as where this could go. But they've teed it up super, super eloquently. Yeah.
No, I'm looking forward to it. And for the record, like, if Thrawn comes back and takes control of the Empire's military, and we end up with like basically another galactic civil war that culminates in our movie that's coming up soon, then I will enjoy that.
It'll probably be dope.
Especially since Filoni's doing it.
As long as there's a reason for Thrawn to do it, though.
Yeah, exactly. And
which literally takes one sentence from Thrawn explaining it.
Yeah, right. And my guess is we will probably get the complexity of Thrawn in this very next episode.
Yeah.
There's going to be, my guess is that the Magistrate and Baylan Skull show up, and they do locate Thrawn, and he quickly boards their ship. And my guess is that there's going to be pretty quickly a conversation where they're like, hey, you ready to go back? And just like, and he's going to be like, hold on. Let me tell you what I really want to do here.
Let me tell you what you just did.
Yeah. And like, let me explain to you how wrong you are about what. But yeah, we're still gonna do some shit. But like, you know, that's kind of the direction I see it going. And then my guess now is that since they're actually traveling to this other galaxy, that Ezra and Thrawn are separated, and like Hera Hera actually gets Ezra and her and
Oh, you mean
Ezra?
Ahsoka?
Ahsoka. Sorry.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Ahsoka and Ezra basically go rescue Sabine separately, and then they both all get back, and then the conflict takes place. That's my best guess, but I really don't know.
And what's kind of cool is now Ahsoka has the taxi of the Purgle whale, where she can go in between these galaxies apparently relatively easily without like an entire mega ship named the Eye of Sion.
Oh, dude, I there's so many different cool directions they can go with this too. Like, how cool would it be if like the Grisk were literally?
I know. I keep thinking about the Grisk.
What if they were the dominant species in this other galaxy, and they've now invaded the new galaxy and are slowly making their way?
Know what?
What
That's
if we meet the
interesting.
Yuuzhan Vong? Like, this could go so many different
And
directions.
people might say, "Oh no, the Grisk aren't from that galaxy." It's like we don't know that. Like the Grisk are still very much so an unknown factor, especially in the chaos. Like,
we also know they're immensely powerful because they had 15 ships at the Battle of Sunrise, and 4 of which were massive capital ships. And Jixtus literally says this is but a tiny fraction of our armada.
Yeah, and not only that, but they were always framed as nomadic as well.
Exactly, and that's actually a really important point. They're framed as, they frame themselves as nomadic, but Thrawn also interprets based on their ship design that they probably do have a home world somewhere that they idealize. All this cool stuff. I'm so excited for Thrawn.
Read
Next
the
week,
Thrawn
we're
books.
gonna
Read
meet
the Thrawn books. Yeah, yeah.
So
hopefully,
one last thing before we get out of here for today.
All right.
So I want to start with Bane because I think that reading the books that I'm suggesting are going to heavily convolute what we're going through right now, and I think it makes more sense for us to cover this particular trilogy that I'm going to talk about in the springtime when we're waiting for a different season of Ahsoka.
You're talking
to come out.
the Bane trilogy.
No. So
Legends.
I want to read the Bane trilogy right away because the Bane trilogy is so separate from what we're doing that we can cover it and it won't convolute what we're doing.
Yeah, it's essentially the origins of the Sith.
Mark Thompson did the entire Heir to the Empire trilogy. Okay. Now, I have never read Heir to the Empire. Neither has Luke. Now, to be clear, Heir to the Empire was one of the original Legends books, series is. It features Grand Admiral Thrawn as a very antagonistic character, from what I understand, that really does want to take control of the Empire. I don't know a ton of the details on purpose because I want to enjoy the books, but like diehard Star Wars fans who have read it insist that it's one of the best Star Wars stories ever told. And so, like, we get introduced to Mara Jade Skywalker, who becomes a very important character in Legends. We get introduced to the concept of clone Jedi and a bunch of other things. So, like, what I would like to do is cover Bane.
Okay.
The whole trilogy.
1 through 3.
Then we'll do the High Republic book that's coming out, the Eye of Darkness, with the return of Marchion Ro. And that comes out in November. We'll cover that one. And then I think in the springtime, when the Acolyte is going on.
Yeah, the Acolyte is gonna be sick.
We'll be covering the Acolyte, but we can take I think it'd be really fun for the purposes of this show, just for fun, to do Heir to the Empire. It's a Mark Thompson audiobook, so like you and I,
fans.
We're big fans of Mark Thompson. Does the best Thrawn voice, so we'll get to hear. lots
you just
more
pissed
Thrawn.
Some people off.
3
the
more
best
books of
Thrawn voice.
Yeah, hey, look, Lars Mikkelsen or whatever, he does a great job. But I think Mark Thompson is the best Thrawn voice.
Yeah, it's pretty.
It's like, I mean, it's just not up for debate. I don't know.
It's pretty sick.
But anyway, so we got lots of Star Wars content
for
to cover
sure, man.
in
We've
the
got
coming
some
years.
good stuff.
And then next year we're gonna have Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones too. So
yeah, and Jason and I have always spoken highly of the audiobooks related to Star Wars, and we'll continue to do so until we have a reason not.
Highly recommend. It's like Star Wars. It's like listening to a movie.
They have like sound effects in it, and they have just stunning music in it, and it's awesome. You guys should totally read through the Bane books with us.
We are starting the Bane books. This first Bane book is probably my favorite because like it is a deep dive into the ideology of the Sith.
It is.
And on 2 different fronts, because like you're thoroughly inundated with the concept of the modern Sith the modern Sith of that era in the Brotherhood of Darkness at the beginning, and
Which
everything.
is entire legions of Sith.
Yes, like literally legions of Sith, and they like I just heard the scene where where Bane is talking to Cordis and he's talking about the different temples, and like we send our certain level of students to these 3 places, and there they get trained to become like basically mindless killing machines, and then the ones that are more powerful than that, they go to this other range of academies, and they are more into espionage and subterfuge, and then like if they're more powerful than that, they go to this other range of academies, and that's where they become like the Sith acolytes and apprentices that like swell our armies, and they're like they all hold lightsabers, but they're not like as powerful as the Sith Masters. And then they have 3 academies that make Sith Masters, and one in particular in Korriban, which is like where the best of the best go, and it's like they dive into all these different things.
So sick.
They dive into battle meditation.
Oh, battle meditation is just a missed opportunity in canon Star Wars.
Oh, they'll find a way. They're going to find a way. They're going to get battle meditation in there. My guess is
maybe
they
the
dive way back. I don't think we'll see it in the Acolyte because
No?
it's got to be in a mass. Because the Acolyte, you have to remember, takes place in a time period when the Sith are in hiding. So, I think they're eventually going to go back to the Old Republic, and when they do that, I think we're going to get to see like big. Naga Sadao or something doing some battle meditation, which would be really cool.
And again, for anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about, battle meditation essentially is envision a large battle happening up in space with dozens and dozens of ships, some of which are single pilot starfighters, and some of them are giant, 100-man ship, right? And then there's literally like a Jedi or a Sith, and then they're in a chamber and they're literally meditating on the battle and then helping like move the
coordinating it basically
and coordinating all the ships, and it's incredibly powerful for whomever has the person meditating.
Yeah, there's
super cool.
There's a really cool scene at the first Battle of Ruusan. I don't know if you've got to that part yet. I think you have, but basically like General Khan, who's the leader of the Brotherhood of Darkness, he's leading his forces through battle meditation as his fleet shows up to try to capture Ruusan. But then another, I think an Ithorian, if I remember correctly, but a Jedi is in a different capital ship using their battle meditation, and like immediately like these 2 Republic capital ships pull like a joint slashing maneuver that destroys one of the Sith capital ships,
which was essentially impossible,
which was like an impossible maneuver, and then Lord Kopej literally like straight up like Anakin style like flies his ship into the hangar bay, jumps out, like messes up all the guards, marches through the capital ship, cuts down 2 Padawans, and then kills him with the Force. Actually, one he literally just Force pushes and obliterates, and then the other one he electrocutes until he cooks.
He said it would have been beneath him to pull out his lightsaber.
Yeah, it literally goes like it would have been beneath him to engage these 2 in lightsaber combat. Then he walks up to the person doing the battle meditation, and there's this cool moment where he's like, yeah, it robbed me of the joy of the kill to see that she was so committed to the larger goal that she didn't even stop battle meditating to defend herself. She just stayed there until she was cut down. It's so good. And then the end of that book, like as soon as Bane gets like messed up by Sirach and then like undergoes his transformation into like the Sith that he would become, and like everything he does to confront the ideologies of the Brotherhood, it is top tier Star Wars content. I'm very, very excited to go through these books with you and to actually cover them, because we've talked about Bane a lot over the course of this show.
And there's certain things that I consider canon that aren't, and the Bane trilogy is one of them, and then Plagueis.
Yes, but Bane and Plagueis, and we got to do Plagueis after Bane too, because Plagueis is like an
Plagueis is raw.
I listened to Plagueis again like about a year and a half ago, and just another book that's just like top tier Sith ideology. Just because what's so cool with Plagueis is like Darth Plagueis literally was like a Sith philosopher. Like that's literally what he was, and most of the book is like Plagueis like contemplating the trials, tribulations, successes, and failures of all these previous Sith. It honestly is really cool. And then it ends with one of the most epic speeches of all time, the speech of Palpatine. After he stayed. I'm excited to dive into all that.
Me too, man. We've got some good stuff.
All right, guys, that is all we have for today. As always, we sincerely appreciate you guys supporting the show. We will be back next Tuesday for the most anticipated episode of Ahsoka in a long time.
Let's go. Thanks a lot.